Welcome back to the podcast. We are going to have some fun today. We will discuss AI, we will discuss SEO, we will discuss the digital marketing success plan with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Corey Morris. He's the founder and CEO of Voltage. They are a premier digital agency focused on digital marketing and websites. And we're going to just plug some URLs here right off the bat, right? Breaking all the, we're going to say voltage.digital is this agency, and that thedmsp.com is the digital marketing success plan. Corey Morris on Amazon, and then also corey.morris.com, just so we can have some tabs open, right? We're going out of order. We're defying norms, breaking rules today. So Corey, glad to be speaking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. And so we introduced you a little bit, but in your own words, what are you excited about? Where's your focus these days?
My agency specifically has gone through a process of narrowing and niching down over the past couple of years. So the areas of search, both SEO and paid, and websites are what we're doing nowadays. And in that really is where the book came from in the past year and a half of trying to battle through a lot of the experiences people have working with agencies or not understanding or what the process is, or if a process is outdated or not, or I've seen too many companies waste money with agencies or spend in Google and find out 6 months or a year in that they're getting no ROI, and it's a really poor experience. So there's probably 7 or 8 other different stories and factors of the what and why, but that's really my focus now, is to bring right fit positive experiences to client and agency relationships, but more than that, make sure people don't lose money in the whole experience as things get more and more complicated and complex in search alone, let alone the rest of digital marketing.
Okay, well, let's change some lives, right? Let's show how it's done differently. And when you talk about this idea of things getting more complex, what goes to come to mind for me is thinking like, okay, like it gets all complex and there's all this competition, all these things to know. So that's the best time to go back to the beginning and not just chase just the complexity, but also chase the simplicity and say, well, hey, with SEO, like what are those rules? What's Google looking for? Do we really have just those basics in place? Are we like working on our keywords and our load time and our off page and our on page? Have we looked at our ads? Have we looked at our landing pages and then like go up the ladder to see what the complexity is? And you mentioned about sometimes you find what the work the last agency did, and it's scary stuff, right? Like a bunch of years ago, I found like there was a form somewhere in some website where there was like 10 opt-ins and they ran ads and it cost like $900 per opt-in, just because the agency, threw some ads there, set up landing page and said, hey, look what we did. Look at all of your impressions, your clicks. But then you drill down, look at the right things, like, oh, that's not really what I want. And so like, what have you seen? Like, where are people hurting right now? Where are they being maybe screwed over by agencies or trying to do it themselves? Just where's the sticking point with SEO, with paid search these days?
Yeah, there's a number of them, and I changed names of companies and people to protect the innocent and be ultra transparent in my book. But I've got a bunch of those stories where it's everything from and I've written about it for Search Engine Land and Search Engine Journal as well, hit on a lot of these topics of like SEO is not just SEO, and it hasn't been for a long time. It's not just dependent on a person with an SEO title, unless they're in a small business and they can make all the decisions. There are all the different resource needs and people involved for you to have success, whether it's through the content or IT or whatever you need. But there's also a lot of, you just mentioned where you start, and it is a good thing, but to be in alignment with best practices and the things that you should be doing. But best practices don't dictate your strategy, and they're independent of knowing whether you're making ROI or not in your business. And so there's a whole level of, are you just doing a bunch of tactics, or are they subordinate to a strategy and connected to that? And is your strategy deep enough in the digital marketing realm to connect to business outcomes? So when the CEO or C-suite comes through and wants to know, is this working or not? Or a CFO wants to know what the return on investment is for a given year, you can actually articulate that and connect that deep enough where it doesn't look like just a big expense. It actually looks like an investment, which had an expectation of return on investment. So it's there are definitely a lot of areas. We just actually brought on a client who was working with a previous agency. They weren't doing anything wrong per se, and but they were, she didn't understand why they were getting 3 blog posts a month and 7 social media posts a week, and it felt like a lot of activity just to do things, but none of it was rooted in an end goal that made the company more money. And those are some of the challenges that we get into, is like, are we doing things just because we think we should be doing things, or we've always done the same things? Or are we, really, concentrating where we put that investment in time, dollars, effort, as well. So just so, and then, and unfortunately, sometimes people will write off a channel entirely and say, well, PPC doesn't work or SEO doesn't work. Well, maybe it wasn't the right situation for you and it could work. Or maybe you are totally right, but don't just give up on other things that would work, and bury your head in the sand and ignore what's coming.
So there's a lot to think about there, right? This is a tough problem to solve because you're saying that there's the best practices to start with, then there's the tactics, but they all need to lead to something. You have to be organized, have a plan, have these kind of recurring tasks, right? It's not just a one shot, one off deal. You have to be kind of have your team working on these things regularly, but then also be pursuing sort of goals and milestones and making sure that the everything's working. You're reaching your metrics, you're making money, you're being profitable. But then even another level from that is then to simplify it again and have some kind of dashboard and reporting. That way you can justify your existence and you're not hiding behind the technicalities and the jargon, and everyone can see if those numbers are back on the decline, and they can also see that it's not just the activity, but you're also getting some kinds of results. And so that seems like a tough nut to crack, seems overwhelming. And so, like, what's the starting point with this? Are you the type of agency, like, you do an audit, or you talk about goals, or like, how do you like even take the first step in this like 72-step process?
Yeah, so you just gave me a really easy on ramp to talk about the start planning process, which is a focal point in my book, The Digital Marketing Success Plan. So it's an acronym, START. It's a 5-step process. It's our flagship kind of service offering. I wrote the book so I could transparently put it out there and give it away. So there's no mystique behind this. It's not like one magic tactic to go try this and do this and it's going to work for everybody, but it's more of, this is a process and a collaborative process. It could take 30 days. It could take 90 days. You could do it while you're going into annual planning to try to make sure there's no gaps in the coming year. But really, it hits on all the things you just talked about. So the S is for strategy, and that's to go revisit the strategy, especially in organizations where you might have a bigger marketing team. People have different understandings of what a success is, or what it's connected to and what ROI is, or maybe it's connected for them in a different channel in a different way than somebody else who's managing another channel. So getting on the same page with strategy, or even when you're bringing in C-suite or other decision makers, to make sure, even if we're using the same words, that we have the same definition for them and understand what a success is. Being able to articulate that and make sure it's deep enough connected to business outcomes is really key in that strategy phase. And then the T is for tactics. It's putting everything on the table and not just biasing based on what channels we like or what channels have always worked. The A is for application, and that is understanding the assets, our website, our landing pages, our inventory of display assets, any of those things that we might need in the coming year. So we're not just doing them flying by the seat of our pants to do them or create them. Review. The R is review, and that's making sure we do have the dashboard in place, and not just that we have data, but that we have a holistic view of ROI. Because out of the box, reporting software doesn't know how much we spend on in-house staff or how much we spend on software or vendors and agencies and people like that. So making sure we have a holistic view, and not just a set of marketing KPIs, but marketing KPIs that are mapped to business KPIs. And then the T, at the end, is for transformation. That's for making sure that we have a well-documented plan, resources booked and lined up, so we don't, and then we have a discipline. So this plan is not in somebody's head, but it's documented somewhere and it is scheduled. And so when we get busy, We don't put it on the shelf for a few months, or when a new product launches or a new customer focus emerges or the sales team wants us to do something different. We can say timeout. How much does this change our existing plan, or is this additive? Where does budget come from? So we don't get to the end of the year where we got pulled in this zigzag path, and then it sounds like a bunch of excuses when somebody who's disconnected from it in the C-suite's like, what's the return on investment? Well, we can't don't really have it because we did a few months over here, we did a few months over there on this, heavy on this part of the strategy and tactics, and then we have nothing to show for it, and it's not a pretty place to be.
And so that's why we need your guide, and we need the start planning process in order to avoid some of these mistakes, right? Just it's so easy to not have a plan or not stick to the plan, or maybe you're only sticking to 80%, and then when the bright shiny objects come along, now you're spread a little bit thin, which you think in the moment is okay, but then as you said, then at the end of the year or quarter, or when it's crunch time, when it's time to then look at what happened, then you were not at peak results or peak productivity just because your focus was kind of juggling two things, or you paused just to get to that. So we need to have our goals and stick to them, and use some of these steps in the process in order to make sure that we avoid failure and guarantee success
Yeah.
and adapt, and all those platitudes, all those things you want.
Well, and yeah, because somebody leaves and it wasn't documented, it was in their head. Okay, where are you starting from zero? Or you don't have a trigger point early enough to realize whether your Google ad spend is paying off in a way that you thought, and then you have regrets because it's like, I would have, if I've known this 6 months ago, we wouldn't have wasted that 200 grand, right? We would have repositioned that or broken that down and taken a step back. Or, again, then it gets into personal territory. If it's like my plan in my head and it's not actionable or accountable, if it's the plan and we all agree to it, it's not then personal, right? It's a business thing. And, if we find that competitors change, Google launches something new, chat gpt now has search in it, all these things can lead us into, okay, the marketplace shifted. So it's also the balance of having a documented plan while maintaining agility and going back and revisiting the plan as often as needed, versus there not being a plan and we just go spend a bunch of money and time in all these areas, based on where the wind blows us, and the winds are blowing strongly.
Yeah, and I think that that's like not talked about enough. This whole idea of having the plan and almost like pursuing the boringness of your business. Like when I take my son to school every morning, we get there 10 minutes before we have to, and it's really boring. And there's never any stress. We're never in a rush. And I'm just like, do I really need to get there 10 minutes early? Well, yes, because if I had gotten there 10 minutes late, I would have thought back and said, oh man, I wish my past self had done this. So I think there's a lot of that, right? Especially with entrepreneurship, there's the wanting to just cowboy through and to just go full blast and just wing it, and then if it works out, then you feel smart, you feel like, see, I didn't even need that plan. But then eventually you run out of luck, and so that's when we need to document and revisit and make sure that it's something that we're using and we're adjusting and it's making sense. And so you laid out for us some of these things that we need to know, but it's always great on the podcast to hear about stories, especially ones about your own adventures, right? Because maybe the business being solid and running, that can be boring, but then as far as like the problem solving and getting these websites performing, maybe that can be the adventurous part that replaces the chaos that was within ourselves. And so as far as you like helping some of these companies and your agency applying some of this SEO or paid ads juice, like what is kind of something interesting that's happened? What do you feel like bragging about?
Yeah, it's been really interesting as we've narrowed our focus over the past couple of years, as I mentioned earlier. Um, we've gotten deeper into conversations connected to the money part of it, and getting into the messiness of things on the client side, and be more like a trusted advisor and more of a business expert first, or at least put that hat on alongside with our search marketing, our website hats as well. And I've got to be honest, earlier in my career, I would have been scared to death. I would have wanted to hide behind just what I can control in the marketing or SEO KPIs. But I also done this long enough. I'm coming up on 20 years next year, that I also know that even if I'm doing my job 100% and getting an A. If the client has challenges that I'm not willing to go over to their side to address, or they can't fix, like, attribution or CRM use, or talking to customers why the sales process fails, even though leads qualified, if I'm not willing to get messy enough with them, then I can do such a good job that I still get myself fired 6 months in, because it's like, well, that's great, but we're not ready for you because we can't get these leads to close, or we can't get whatever to happen. And so I've learned enough through a lot of those painful moments where you get blindsided of like, well, you did too good of a job. Now it's easy, and we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes and learned from the mistake side of things too. But even on the positive side, there's always room for making sure that you're helping the business and connected. It always comes back to money somewhere, right? Even if it's like, we just want brand awareness. Well, how do we validate that? And how eventually somebody's writing a check for this, and we need to make sure that they're making a good investment, and go beyond just sitting behind KPIs that I'm comfortable with of showing them clicks and conversions.
And how do you avoid too much of that scope creep? Because I noticed on your website you said like you're proud to not be a full stack, full service agency. And it's kind of something to navigate, right? Where you say like, well, you hear about like the advice of, well, your business should solve less problems, right? Because then you can be more specialized and target the people and increase the prices, all that kind of stuff. So how do you balance that with like not wanting to be spread too thin and do everything and be a jack of all trades?
When we were, admittedly, we were, when we were, 20 something people, and you've got one person who's the email marketing expert, one person who's like the social media person, one copywriter. And I got tired of, having, we had clients in 11 different CRMs and platforms, and one person who had to be master of all, and really you're master of none at that point. And so what we really focused on is where we feel like we can go up against anybody in North America in the areas that we're in. And in other areas, if somebody came to us and wanted something that's outside of what we do in house, we've built a lot of relationships with trusted partners we feel like are the best in North America at what they do, that we can then be an advocate for our client, versus trying to say we do it, contract it out, and then have things go awry because we're in the middle of something with subject matter that we're not the biggest expert in our space on. So that has really helped us. It's built a lot of trust, in terms of saying, hey, no, you want the expert at the table equally for that category, or you want me to tell you who to go work with for this thing if it's not connected to the overall digital strategy. And we vetted them, so you're not just having to roll the dice. And so that's been good for us to be open and upfront and honest about that versus trying to be everything to everyone. And I'm not throwing shade at any full service agencies with that statement on my site, but I like to make it like it's literally like the second statement, or second set of text there. And I just want to be clear about that up front, of where our focus is, and not mislead anybody into thinking that we're doing everything, at the same level as we do search and web.
And I think that your thought process there, it ties into the newness, right? You said that the book kind of gives away all this stuff for free, and then the implementation, if you need help, someone can choose to come to you. And similar concept, right? In the olden days, you would try to be the middleman, you would try to learn it yourself, but then now it's like, well, hey, I've got this friend in kind of my unofficial referral network. They're vetted. Here they are. You score points with everyone. It kind of keeps you employed, or keeps you working, and then you kind of score the brownie points. And I do that kind of thing all the time, right? I'll just be like, hey, here's this person, here's this friend, I know him, and then I don't ask for any kind of finder's fee, middleman. I'm just like, hey, here, I'm looking to solve your problem, so that way your problem gets solved, your business keeps going smoothly, and then I can continue on doing what I do, which is improving and learning and enhancing and doing better in our own lane. But we don't have to just like kind of get distracted by all these other bright shiny objects here. And so I want to make sure, as we're kind of getting near the end of our conversation, that we talked about AI, because you told me before we started recording that you have this joke where you give this keynote speech and AI is not mentioned until 75% in. I think I might have mentioned it once, but it hasn't really been our conversation until the end. So we're still hitting that ratio, I think. And so AI, right? I can't tell if it's scary, crazy, exciting, too much, not enough. And I'm good these days at like I can like spend 2 hours on it and kind of get like 8 hours of work done as far as like the content writing and the SEO. But I'm always kind of trying to up my game, and sometimes I do get stuck with it, and sometimes I do go too far down a rabbit hole. So AI, help us understand it, manage it, make money from it.
Yeah. So my process that I put together that I've been working on for over a year now that led into the book um, allows for changes in technology. In fact, it expects them to happen. So whether, we go past AI or outside of AI, and like tomorrow there's holographic ads or something like that that we're optimizing and managing. When those things happen, we have space and room and discipline to be able to document and have an accountable plan that manages around them. But with what's happening right now, with the rollout of or integration of search into Chat GPT, with antitrust and regulatory things that Google's going through, and questions about how it might get broken up. Even the trend that started long ago, years ago, before even COVID, of Google sending less traffic through to websites and answering more things directly in the search engine. AI overviews is another aspect of that, where they're answering the question directly without often having a click come through. So the trend of downward amounts of click traffic from Google, all of those things coming together can be stressful on the surface. But as we look at it, making sure that we stay up on where the industry is going and where our target audience is critical, right? As things get more fragmented and traffic sources are more varied. I look at it as an opportunity, right, to make sure that we can differentiate and we're not all just fighting in one platform for the same clicks and beating each other up over price or whatever for the same leads. But it's an opportunity to be found where our clients or target audiences and customers are going to be. When it comes to our individual use of AI, I also often remind myself and others that all of us likely feel like we're behind, right? There's always an imposter syndrome or an envy because somebody creates this cool thing or has invested, all their time in something. And it's like, am I spending enough time? If you focus on what's working today, and it's like, well, AI experimentation or use got pushed to the end and I ran out of time in that week. Or vice versa, if you're on the other side, and you chase that shiny object, as you mentioned, and then you finding that you're not having room and time to get things done that you do need to do today. And so in many cases, in our agency, we have a biweekly task force that's cross-functional, that we can come together and talk about the problems, things we're solving, and work together. So nobody's on island, and there's accountability built into it, but even personal accountability. It's about scheduling intentional time to go experiment and test. So that way you don't have an unending time and you're distracted all the time, or vice versa. It gets squeezed out of your day or your week, and it's intentional time where you have permission to test and create the next new thing.
And those are two very powerful ideas and tools, right? Number one, you're saying to block out the time, and number two, don't go it alone. Do have your meetings and review your goals and what you're working on, because your mind can play tricks on you in many ways. And if you ask me, the answer is to play tricks back, right? Like they talk about the Pomodoro technique, where you just say like, I'll just do this for 20 minutes, or you block out an hour. And man, if you can get in practice with that, and you say, okay, when the timer is done, I wrap up and I'm done, and then you have to go to like those other tasks, then it's like you're kind of like, okay, well, let me get this done. Let me go do a good job here. That way, when it comes time next time to get on the AI tasking, and I can have fun. And so there's all these ways that are available to us to just outsmart ourselves and to accomplish these things that are important. But as far as just like your own implementation of AI, your answer will probably change next week. But like, what do you use it for, or like what would be a good homework assignment for us to like, are you one of those like to use it for strategy or keywords? Like what's a good usage like practically of AI lately?
Yeah, so my team uses it extensively for things that have been manual tasks, slow tasks, to speed up and create efficiencies. And a lot of that's in the areas of auditing, some in research as well when it comes to keywords and topics, things that, again, you just need to put time into, or it takes time to go get the data, having it come to you, and then put your, focus your human brain on the things that matter. For me personally, it's about anytime I come across a mundane task or something I haven't done, and before I just go manually start messing around in that spreadsheet or coming up with a list of questions based on subject matter, then just go plug this article in here. For another podcast, I was asked, there were some initial questions based off a couple of articles I've read, and I'm going to go do that later today and just go plug it in, see what questions it comes up with. So it's not just limited to what's in my head that might be boring. Go find some other angles and go find something new faster than I could sit here for 3 hours and come up with some really stale things.
I like that attitude that it won't take over your job for sure, or if it does, it doesn't do as good of a job. But you're saying that the filter is really important, right? That you have it maybe like point out the problems on the landing page, or you say, well, give me all these questions or give me these keyword ideas and give me this big long list, and then I'll say, well, hey, here's the best 10% or here's the top 10, so you're like working along with it. And so that's just a good idea in general. And that's an evergreen answer, right? Because no matter what AI does, no matter what tool or what new thing it does, if like you said, they just rolled out search, whatever the next thing is, but there will still be that kind of strategy of saying, well, what do I have in front of me? And what's kind of mundane or slow going? And then how can AI get me 80% of the way there or shortcut the time? That's a deep question. No one said that questions always had to have an easy answer, but with what you've given us and what you have as far as helping out these companies that need better SEO, better ads, metrics, all that going on. I mean, tell me about your book and your agency. I mean, we've been talking about it, but as far as like someone knowing if they should take the next step, if they should get your book, they should contact you. How does somebody know if they're the right fit and where should they go?
Yeah, so I would encourage anyone to go first to thedmsp.com. So it's short for Digital Marketing Success Plan, because that would be a really long domain. So it's
Oh yeah.
thedmsp.com. That's where you can find the process, the framework, even some phases of digital marketing overall and where you are and where you might be ready or not. And it'll link you straight over to Amazon as well. So books $10 for the Kindle, 20 for paperback. So an affordable a way to go grab all this information and see, based on your planning process or strategy or whatnot, where there might be gaps or how you fit any of this into your own strategy or process, or use the framework from start to finish. For any help, there's easy ways to contact me there. Contact my team. We'll do a free consultation. We'll talk through. We'd love talking with businesses about their problems and challenges without putting anybody in a sales queue. We don't have a sales team. I'm not a salesperson, so we'd be happy to talk to anybody. Similarly, over on voltage.digital, that's the agency site. If you maybe are a step further and you're like, hey, we need help, or I want to explore what help might look like, that's a great place to engage with us. Or for any opportunities for one-off consulting, speaking, interviews, CoreyMorris.com would be the other place.
Very cool. Well, people need this, and there's definitely the problem that we mentioned a few times of just flying by the seat of your pants, and then you get flying by the seat of your pants results. And so there's definitely value in someone grabbing the digital marketing success plan and looking at those steps, the prerequisites, planning, campaign, performance, and kind of just flipping through it, because sometimes it takes repetition for ideas to really stick, right? So they might flip through the DMSP here as we're calling it, and they might like flip through and say, hey, I've got this, but I'm missing that other part, and I've got to revisit that. And then when it comes time to get your team on board, that can be a hard sell as well. But if you say to your team, well, hey, look, there's this book that exists, and kind of to get everyone on board with the idea, and then once you begin to implement, then to say, hey, well, are we on track? Are we revisiting? Or is this a solid strategy, or do we have a solid implementation? The digital marketing success plan is probably exactly what you need if you want to take your business seriously, if you want to scale, get your team working together, and so many other wonderful, amazing things that come about as a part of that, including a successful business, including making money, including everyone being happy and less stressed out. That is the DMSP.com to check out the digital marketing success plan. We mentioned that the agency is voltage.digital, the premium digital agency for challenger brands, and then CoreyMorris.com. If you're super impressed with what Corey had to say today, you want him on your show, you want him to keynote your event, you can check out his search engine land articles and so much more. That's CoreyMorris.com. And so as people are going there, before I let you go, Corey, it's time to put you on the spot and ask for a fun, helpful quote or lesson that may have served you in life and business that you can pass on to us. So what comes to mind for you as far as a fun quote or lesson?
Yeah, I think the lesson, something I've had to learn as I've gotten into business and life is remembering the risk or level of risk of not taking an action. It's easy to, I'm by nature a pretty risk adverse person. That's probably why I want to create processes and frameworks and plans out of them. But so I'll overthink or overcalculate something before I make a decision. But at the same time, I've had to learn the hard way that inaction or not making a decision or delaying a decision for 3 months is going to cost me in ways that maybe I'm not thinking about as well. So if you're punting a decision or sitting on something, just in life in general, not even business, right? Just make sure that you understand the risks involved of staying in the same season or staying in the same situation versus even if you're pushed out of your comfort zone to take an action.
100%. The cost of an action and staying in that comfort zone and stressing out a little is okay, right? Planning a little is okay. That way you're taking a calculated risk. But if you have that self awareness, if you know yourself, if you tend to be the kind of person that plans, and then stops yourself from proceeding, then maybe overcorrect a little bit and say, hey, I did the plans. Now it's time to proceed despite the fear. Because if you don't, random chance might make that decision for you. Someone else might make that decision for you. So be proactive, be a leader, be someone that goes out there and gets it. So pursue business, pursue life, CoreyMorris.com and thedmsp.com. Most importantly, voltage.digital. Go to those sites. You'll love it. You get the help you need as far as getting your digital marketing, SEO, and all this crazy stuff figured out. Corey Morris, it's been fabulous and a blast speaking with you.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.